नमः ओं विष्णुपादाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री द्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Yes. So, continuing with this life story of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Once a pilgrim Brahmana was received at the house of Jagannath Mishra, and when he was offering food to the Godhead, the Lord appeared before him and partook of the prepared food. The eatables had to be rejected because the child touched them, and so the Brahmana had to make another preparation. The next time, the same thing happened, and when this happened repeatedly for the third time, the baby was finally put to bed. At about 12 at night, when all the members of the house were fast asleep with their closed rooms, the pilgrim Brahmana offered his specially prepared foods to the deity, and in the same way, the baby Lord appeared before the pilgrim and spoiled his offerings. The Brahmana then began to cry, but since everyone was fast asleep, no one could hear him. At that time, the baby Lord appeared before the fortunate Brahmana and disclosed his identity as Krishna himself. The Brahmana was forbidden to disclose this incident, and the baby returned to the lap of his mother. There are many similar incidences in his childhood. As a naughty boy, he sometimes used to tease the orthodox Brahmanas who used to take bath in the Ganges, who used to bathe in the Ganges. When the Brahmanas complained to his mother that he was splashing them with water instead of attending school, the Lord suddenly appeared before his father, as though just coming from the school with all his school clothes and books. At the bathing ghat, he also used to play jokes on the neighboring girls who engaged in worshipping Shiva in the hopes of getting good husbands. This is a common practice amongst unmarried girls in Hindu families. While they were engaged in such worship, uh, the Lord naughtily appeared before them and said, "My dear sisters, please give me all the offerings you have just brought for Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is my devotee and Parvati is my maidservant. If you worship me, then Lord Shiva and all the other demigods will be more satisfied." Some of them refused to obey the naughty Lord, and he would curse them that due to their refusal, they would be married to old men who had 7 children by their previous wives. Out of fear and sometimes out of love, the girls would also offer him various goods, and then the Lord would bless them and assure them that they would have very good husbands and that they would be mothers of dozens of children. The blessings would enliven the girls, but they used often to complain of these childhood incidences to their mothers. In this way, the Lord passed his early childhood. When he was just 16 years old, he started his own Chatushpathi, village school conducted by a learned Brahmana. In this school, he would simply explain Krishna even in readings of grammar. Srila Jiva Goswami, in order to please the Lord, later composed a grammar in Sanskrit in which all the rules of grammar were explained with examples that use the holy names of the Lord. The grammar is still current. It is known as Hari Namamrit Vyakarana, and it is prescribed in the syllabus of the schools in Bengal. During this time, a great Kashmir scholar named Keshav Kashmiri came to Navadvip to hold discussions on the Shastras. The Kashmir Pandit was a champion scholar, and he had traveled to all places of learning in India. Finally, he came to Navadvip to contest the learned Pandits there. The Pandits of Navadvip decided to match Nimai Pandit, Lord Chaitanya, with Kashmir Pandit, thinking that if Nimai Pandit were defeated, they would have another chance to debate with the scholar. For Nimai Pandit was only a boy, and if Kashmir Pandit was defeated, then they would be even more glorified because people would proclaim that a mere boy of Navadvip defeated a champion scholar who was famous throughout India. It so happened that Nimai Pandit met Keshav Kashmiri while strolling on the banks of the Ganges. The Lord requested him to compose a Sanskrit verse in praise of the Ganges, and the Pandit, within a short time, composed 100 shlokas, reciting the verses like a storm and showing the strength of his vast learning. Nimai Pandit at once memorized all the shlokas without an error. He quoted the 64th shloka and pointed out certain rhetorical and literary irregularities. He particularly questioned the Pandit's use of the words Bhavani Bhartu. He pointed out that the use of these two words was redundant. Bhavani means the wife of Shiva, and who else can be her bharta or husband? He also pointed out several other discrepancies, and the Kashmir Pandit was struck with wonder. He was astonished that a mere student of grammar could point out the literary mistakes of an erudite scholar. Although this matter was ended prior to any public meeting, the news spread like wildfire all over Navadvip. But finally, Keshav Kashmiri was ordered in a dream by Saraswati, the goddess of learning, to submit to the Lord, and thus Kashmir Pandit became a follower of the Lord. The Lord was then married with great pomp and gaiety, and at this time he began to preach the congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord at Navadvip. Some of the Brahmanas became envious of his popularity, and they put many hindrances on his path. They were so jealous that they finally took the matter before the Muslim magistrate at Navadvip. Bengal was then governed by Pathans. The governor of the province was Nawab Hussain Shah. The Muslim magistrate of Navadvip took up the complaints of the Brahmanas seriously, and at first he warned the followers of Nimai Pandit not to chant loudly the name of Hari. But but Lord Chaitanya asked his followers to disobey the orders of the Qazi, and they went on with their Sankirtan, chanting party as usual. The magistrate then sent constables who interrupted a Sankirtan and broke some of the mridangas, drums. When Nimai Pandit heard of this incident, he organized a party for civil disobedience. He is the pioneer of the civil disobedience movement in India for the right cause. He organized a procession of 100,000 men with thousands of mridangas and kartals. And this process passed over the roads of Navadvip in defiance of the Qazi who issued the order. Finally, the procession reached the house of Qazi, who went upstairs out of fear of the masses. The great crowds assembled at Qazi's house displayed a violent temper, but the Lord asked them to be peaceful. At this time, the Qazi came down and tried to pacify the Lord by addressing him as his nephew. He pointed out that Nilambar Chakravarti referred to him as an uncle, and consequently, Srimati Shachi Devi, the mother of Nimai Pandit, was his sister. He asked the Lord whether his sister's son could be angry at his maternal uncle, and the Lord replied that since the Qazi was his maternal uncle, he should receive his nephew well at his home. In this way, the issue was mitigated, and the two learned scholars began a long discussion on the Quran and the Hindu Shastras. The Lord raised the question of cow killing, and the Qazi properly answered him by referring to the Quran. In turn, the Qazi also questioned the Lord about cow sacrifice in the Vedas, and the Lord replied that such sacrifice as mentioned in the Vedas is not actually cow killing. In that sacrifice, an old bull or cow was sacrificed for the sake of receiving a fresh, younger life by the power of Vedic mantras. But in the Kali Yuga, such cow sacrifices were forbidden because there are no qualified brahmanas capable of conducting such a sacrifice. In fact, in Kali Yuga, all yajnas, sacrifices are forbidden because they are useless attempts by foolish men. And in Kali Yuga, only the Sankirtan yajna is recommended for all practical purposes. Speaking in this way, the Lord finally convinced the Qazi, who became the Lord's follower. The Qazi thenceforth declared that no one should hinder the Sankirtan movement, which was started by the Lord, and the Qazi left this order in his will for the sake of progeny. The Qazi's tomb still exists in the area of Navadvip, and Hindu pilgrims go there to show their respects. The Qazi's descendants are residents, and they never objected to Sankirtan, even during the Hindu-Muslim riot days. Okay, so here we are discussing some of the pastimes of the early pastimes of the Lord. So starting first, we discussed about the appearance of Brahmana in his house and how he showed his form as Gopal to the Brahmana. So actually, see, Mahaprabhu is Channa avatar, hidden incarnation. He is not he did not proclaim himself as Krishna as such. So Mahaprabhu's pastimes are actually divided into three parts: his childhood pastimes, his youth pastimes, and eventually his pastimes as a sannyasi. Within these pastimes, also we can consider following divisions. One is his pastime as a neophyte devotee, then as a madhyam or a medium devotee, and then as an advanced devotee or an uttam adhikari. Uttam adhikari. By studying the life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very carefully, we can understand the whole process of bhakti. So, Mahaprabhu, in his initial years, played the role of an arrogant scholar. He would challenge people on the streets, he would defeat them in arguments. He was very knowledgeable and he would show off that knowledge. And this was not very well liked by the Vaishnavas of Navadvip. But then he took an initiation. He took initiation uh, from Ishwarapuri in Gaya. And it so happened that Mahaprabhu lost his brother and then his father. First, his brother left home. He became a sannyasi, Shankararanya. And then his father passed away. So he went to perform the Shraddha ceremony for his father. And there he took initiation. After his initiation, he displayed the characteristics of a medium devotee, Madhyamadhikari. A Madhyamadhikari is someone who is convinced about the Lord, but he can also see the distinction between a devotee and a non devotee. So Mahaprabhu played that role of a householder. And then he took sannyas and displayed the characteristics of a very advanced devotee, of a pure devotee. As an Uttamadhikari, Mahaprabhu showed how in the later stages of life of an advanced devotee, the only consciousness is that of Krishna. In his last years on earth, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not preach. In fact, he would not even meet anyone. He was always lost in the ecstasies of the holy name. So that's quite a profound discussion. This discussion, that's the most advanced topic in the discussion of bhakti. But we can see that Mahaprabhu has displayed his activities in so many ways. Mahaprabhu is the ideal preacher of Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's why here we are discussing Mahaprabhu's activities in such great details. One may think why we have dedicated so many 20, 30 pages here to the life of Mahaprabhu. The idea is to first understand. See, Srimad Bhagavatam is graduate study of bhakti. If it is not understood in its proper perspective, it will be reduced to mere stories, and which will be of no benefit at all. In fact, it would lead to offenses. So it is most important that we understand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we understand the personality Bhagavat, then we understand the book Bhagavat. Nashtaprayeshva bhadreshu nityam Bhagavat sevaya. Bhagavati uttam shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. So if we want the process of bhakti to be established in our hearts, we have to first understand the book Bhagavat and the person Bhagavat. So person Bhagavat, ideal preacher is Lord Chaitanya. After we understand his life and characteristics, we'll move on to the book Bhagavat. So Mahaprabhu performed all these various activities. Yes, somebody has a question?
No, Prabhuji, I was just going to ask if I can read.
Oh, yeah, you can continue, please.
ठीक है Prabhuji, thank you ji, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, but if anybody has questions, they can ask first.
Ji.
Okay, Mataji, you can continue.
Thank you, Ji. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ji ki jai. This incident shows clearly that the Lord was not a so-called timid Vaishnav. A Vaishnav is a fearless devotee of the Lord. And for the right cause, he can take any step suitable for the purpose. Arjuna was also a Vaishnav devotee of Lord Krishna, and he fought valiantly for the satisfaction of the Lord. Similarly, Vajrangaji or Hanuman was also a devotee of Lord Ram, and he gave lessons to the non-devotee party of Ravan. The principles of Vaishnavism are to satisfy the Lord by all means. A Vaishnav is by nature non-violent, peaceful living being, and he has all the good qualities of God. But when the non-devotee blasphemes the Lord or his devotee, the Vaishnav never tolerates such impudency. After this incident, the Lord began to preach and propagate his Bhagavad Dharma or Sankirtan movement more vigorously, and whoever stood against this propagation of the Yuga Dharma or the duty of the age was properly punished by various types of chastisement. Two Brahmana gentlemen named Chapala and Gopal, who also happened to be the maternal uncles of the Lord, were inflicted with leprosy by the way of chastisement. And later, when they were repentant, they were accepted by the Lord. In the course of his preaching work, he used to send daily all his followers, including Srila Nityanand Prabhu and Thakur Haridas, the two whips of his party, from door to door to preach the Srimad Bhagavatam. All of the Navadvip was surcharged with his Sankirtan movement, and his headquarters were situated at the house of Srivas Thakur and Sri Advait Prabhu, two of his chief householder disciples. These two learned heads of Brahman community were the most ardent supporters of Lord Chaitanya's movement. Sri Advait Prabhu was the chief cause for the advent of the Lord. When Advait Prabhu saw that the total human society was full of materialistic activities and devoid of devotional service, which alone could save mankind from the threefold miseries of the material existence, he, out of his causeless compassion for the age-worn human society, prayed fervently for the incarnation of the Lord and continuously worshipped the Lord with the water of Ganges and leaves of holy Tulasi tree. As far as preaching work in the Sankirtan movement was concerned, everyone was expected to do his daily share according to the order of the Lord. Should I continue, Prabhuji?
Okay, so just like to discuss this a little bit.
Prabhuji.
See, bhakti is not just, like radio transmission, we just hear and then we speak. It involves a great deal of intelligence also. So, this, when we are looking at these pastimes here, see, hmm, Mahaprabhu, you know, preached through his own example. So, when Keshav Kashmiri came to Navadvip, he was actually an arrogant scholar. He had come here to defeat all the scholars. And later on, we'll see a similar pastime in the life of Lord Chaitanya with his disciples, with Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, and Digvijay Pandit. A similar pastime will take place there also. So here, when Keshav Kashmiri came, Mahaprabhu knew what was his intention. See, the scholars of Navadvip were also very proud people. They did not want to be insulted by another person, so they sent Mahaprabhu. They thought that if Mahaprabhu is defeated, then at least he'll not be so arrogant anymore, and they'll be spared all the insult. So, two birds with one stone kind of philosophy they had. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu understood the heart of Keshav Kashmiri, but he also knew that if Keshav Kashmiri is defeated in public, he will commit suicide. He did not want that. So he defeated him in private. And later on, when Mother Saraswati blessed him, this Keshav Kashmiri, he surrendered to the Lord. So it's a very instructive pastime in many ways. First of all, a devotee is not arrogant. Our objective is not to defeat anyone in their philosophy. We are not here to establish some scholarly dominion over others. Our objective is to make people devotees. If yena kena prakara, somehow or the other convince others to become devotees. Sometimes we have to preach to them, sometimes we have to defeat them. But somehow or the other we have to make them devotee. So Mahaprabhu did that. And also another thing that we see is that all the demigods, they are also devotees of the Lord. Demigods are also pleased when the Lord is worshipped. Actually, by worshipping the Lord, we worship the demigods also. The demigods are empowered expansions of the Lord. So when Lord is worshipped, they are automatically worshipped. But our worship should always be pure. So we should not insult the demigods, thinking that we are Krishna devotees. So this is a mistake which Christians and Muslims also make, and sometimes we Vaishnavas also make, that we insult others' religions. So we can see here that demigods are not to be disrespected in any way because they are devotees of the Lord. They are very advanced devotees of the Lord, actually. And later on, we see one more thing, one more golden characteristic of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he debated with Chand Kazi. So nowadays in Vaishnava circles, it has become very fashionable to condemn and criticize the Muslims at all times. So this kind of a condemnation itself is condemned by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That one who has faith in one's own worship should never criticize the path of the others, because in this way he'll become an offender. So Mahaprabhu did not criticize Quran itself, but he criticized the interpretation of Quran. And he convinced Chand Kazi eventually. So in this way, Mahaprabhu diplomatically preached the message of the Lord. There was no point in killing the Kazi or condemning his religion, but Mahaprabhu convinced him to understand the Vaishnava religion. So when we are preaching, we should also understand the consciousness of the other person. But at the same time, the Lord was not a coward. So we may talk big things, but are we willing to put them to action? That is the test of our devotion. So are we willing to preach in the face of the odds? People may not be interested, people may be hostile, but do we have enough faith in our own mission or in the protection of the Lord? Or are we so weak that we just give up when we meet the first signs of resistance? So Vaishnav has to be peaceful, non-violent, but at the same time he should not be timid. So then there are some other incidents also which are coming, which we are going to discuss now. So Advaita Prabhu, Advaita Acharya, is the main cause of advent of the Lord. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's an invocation, Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakhyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. So his Bhaktavatar, he is an incarnation of the Lord. So he is an incarnation of Mahavishnu, Sri Advaita Acharya. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an incarn is an is Krishna himself, Sri Advaita Acharya is Lord Vishnu himself. So when he saw how human society was completely full of materialistic activities, he prayed for the Lord to descend. And when we are talking about the materialistic community, we are not talking about atheists or Muslims here. These were the Brahmanas of Navadvip, whom Advaita Acharya saw as gross materialists. So one may pretend to be a religious person, but if one's heart is only engaged in self gratification, one cannot be considered a devotee. One may even take the names of Krishna, but if one's objectives are only to increase one's wealth or fame, then one is not to be considered a devotee. So when he saw this condition, he became pitiful he saw the pitiful condition of the society. He became very compassionate towards the masses of people, and he prayed for the Lord to advent himself. He did this by worshipping a shaligram with Gangajal and Tulasi, and he prayed for the Lord to descend. Hmm. So, as far as preaching work in the Sankirtan movement was concerned, everyone was expected to do his daily share according to the order of the Lord. So, this is the Sankirtan movement. We all have to cooperate with each other to propagate this. It is not an individual effort. We cannot be passive followers in this movement. We have to propagate this movement actively. Hare Krishna. Yes, any questions or comments so far? Okay, we should continue.
Okay, Prabhuji. Once Nityanand Prabhu and Srila Haridas Thakur was walking down a main road, and on the way they saw a roaring crowd assembled. Upon inquiring from passers-by, they understood that two brothers named Jagai and Madhai were creating a public disturbance in a drunken state. They also heard that these two brothers were born in a respectable Brahman family, but because of the low association, they had turned into debauchees of the worst type. They were not only drunkards, but also meat eaters, women hunters, dacoits, and sinners of all description. Srila Nityanand Prabhu heard all of these stories and decided that these two fallen souls must be first to be delivered. If they were delivered from their sinful life, then the good name of Lord Chaitanya would be even still more glorified. Thinking in this way, Nityanand Prabhu and Haridas Thakur pushed their way through the crowd and asked the two brothers to chant the holy name of Lord Hari. The drunken brothers became enraged upon this request and attacked Nityanand Prabhu with filthy language. Both brothers chased them a considerable distance. In the evening, the report of the preaching work was submitted to the Lord, and he was glad to hear that Nityananda and Haridas had attempted to deliver such a stupid pair of fellows. The next day, Nityanand Prabhu went to see the brothers, and as soon as he approached them, one of them threw a piece of earthen pot at him. This struck him on the forehead, and immediately blood began to flow. But Nityananda Prabhu was so kind that instead of protesting this heinous act, he said, "It does not matter that you have thrown this stone at me. I still request you to chant the holy name of Lord Hari." One of the brothers, Jagai, was astonished to see this behavior of Nityanand Prabhu, and he at once fell down at his feet and asked him to pardon his sinful brother. When Madhai again attempted to hurt Nityanand Prabhu, Jagai stopped him and implored him to fall down at his feet. In the meantime, the news of Nityanand's injury reached the Lord, who at once hurried to the stop in a fiery and angry mood. The Lord immediately invoked his Sudarshan Chakra, the Lord's ultimate weapon, shaped like a wheel, to kill the sinners. But Nityananda Prabhu reminded him of his mission. The mission of the Lord was to deliver the hopelessly fallen souls of Kali Yuga, and the brothers Jagaya and Madai were typical example of these fallen souls. 90% of the population of this age resembles these brothers, despite high birth and mundane respectability. According to the verdict of the revealed scriptures, the total population of the world in this age will be of the lowest Shudra quality and even lower. It should be noted that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never acknowledged the stereotyped caste system by birthright. Rather, he strictly followed the verdict of the Shastra in the matter of one's swarup or real identity. When the Lord was invoking his Sudarshan Chakra and Srila Nityananda Prabhu was imploring him to forgive the two brothers, both the brothers fell down at the lotus feet of the Lord and begged his pardon for their gross behavior. The Lord was also asked by Nityananda Prabhu to accept these repenting souls, and the Lord agreed to accept them on one condition, that they henceforward completely give up all their sinful activities and habits of debauchery. Both the brothers agreed and promised to give up all their sinful habits, and the kind Lord accepted them and did not refer to their past misdeeds. This is a specific kindness of Lord Chaitanya. In this age, no one can say that he is free from sin. It is impossible for anyone to say this, but Lord Chaitanya accepts all kinds of sinful persons on the one condition that they promise not to indulge in sinful active habits after being spiritually initiated by a bona fide spiritual master. There is a number of instructive points to be observed in this incident of the two brothers. In this Kali Yuga, practically all people are of the same quality of Jagaya and Madhai. If they want to be relieved from the reactions of their misdeeds, they must take shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and after spiritual initiation, thus refrain from those things which are prohibited in the Shastras. The prohibitory rules are dealt with within the Lord's teachings to Srila Rupa Goswami. Should I continue, Prabhuji?
Stop here. No, we can stop here. So, this is a very instructive pastime. Actually, when we start the study of Chaitanya Charitamrita, we'll deal with this in much greater detail. But this is an example of preaching. See, this age of Kali, everyone is fallen. We cannot expect any kind of standard from anybody. So, a preacher has to take many risks. We were discussing this the other day also, that a preacher has to take many risks. The general masses of people are not going to accept the preaching of Krishna consciousness. And even within a spiritual society also, there will be a lot of hostility when someone tries to preach pure principles. Srila Prabhupada himself had to face a lot of hostility from his god brothers when he was preaching. In fact, not just that, even Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he was preaching, his own disciples used to mock him. Srila Prabhupada mentions this, that there were many who criticized Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and later on they all fell down. So this is what happens. The Acharya or his representative will preach the pure message, and it has to be accepted as it is. This is not about an individual or anything. This is coming from the Supreme Lord passing through the parampara. The teachings cannot be contaminated by our own mental concoctions. They must be passed on as they are. Whether one faces a hostile opposition or whether one faces favorable conditions, one cannot change the message of the Lord as it is. So here we see that Nityanand Prabhu was physically hurt, but still he continued to preach. And seeing his condition, the Lord became very angry. So actually, the Lord does not take offense for himself, but he takes offense if the devotees are hurt. So, and there's another thing that, one, the general masses of population are low class now. Kalau Shudra Sambhava. Everyone is a Shudra. One may be born in very high family with respectable names, but that doesn't mean that one is himself of a high quality. So Kalau Shudra Sambhava. But Mahaprabhu is so merciful that he says, Kiba Vipra Kiba Nyasi Shudra Kenenai, Jai Krishna Tattva Veta Sei Guru Hai. Anyone who can understand the science of Krishna consciousness is fit to become a preacher. Sei Guru, he can become a spiritual master. So, so this is the specific kindness of Lord Chaitanya. In fact, if one wants to worship Krishna in this age, one has to worship Lord Chaitanya. Approaching Radha and Krishna is practically impossible in this age because our consciousness is so contaminated and because Krishna is so pure. But Lord Chaitanya is so merciful that he gives access to Krishna if one can simply worship him. So, if one wants to be delivered, one must be very careful to avoid all sorts of offenses. One of the offenses is to commit sinful activities on the strength of holy name. So this is one offense, which is certainly gross offense. So a devotee must certainly not commit illicit activities. No meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex. That certainly should be done. But above and beyond, there is the last instruction also to maintain materialistic attachments, even after hearing so many instructions in this regard. So to maintain materialistic attachments, to carry political thought process within a spiritual association, to be desirous of wealth, fame, money, women, to maintain these kind of illicit desires. All of these desires are obstruction in the chanting of the holy name. If we maintain these desires, we may be able to chant for lifetimes, but nothing will happen. Bahu janma jadi kare shramana kirtan, tabhu to na pave Krishna pade premadhan. We may chant for many, many lifetimes, but will not attain Krishna pade premadhan, will not attain the love of lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. So we must be very careful to avoid all offenses and all sinful activities in the execution of devotional service. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? If not, then we stop here today. Thank you very much, everyone. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Prabhuji, it says one must avoid all the sinful activities and refrain from the illicit desires. Whether we honestly acknowledge, regardless we want or not, sinful activities happen. The desires still come. And hence we can see the advancement in spiritual life is wishy-washy. So
Correct.
what do you say about that, Prabhuji, then? Clearly that's obstruction in the path of devotion.
Continue chanting. Continue chanting. Keep struggling. Krishna wants to see our effort. We should not relax our effort. Okay, it's all right. I'm sinful. What to do? No. You should continue to fight that. You should continue to put yourself in a position where there are no sinful desires. Like, if you have sinful desires, you should not put yourself in a position where these desires are becoming stronger. If you have had, like in some past life, if you have been a meat eater, alcohol drinker, then don't go to parties where these things are indulged in, because the past sanskaras, the past impressions will be there still, and they will still disturb us.
Yes.
That's why, I am quite surprised when I see devotees performing Sankirtan on beaches and all. Like there is some weird Sankirtan. I saw some devotees doing Sankirtan on a beach and some girl in bikinis dancing with them. That's a very dangerous thing to do. That should not be done, because that will disturb our mind and our Sankirtan will be lost. Maya, we should respect Maya, Maya is very strong. We should respect that.
One other question, Prabhuji. Here, Nityanand Prabhuji's example is given. He went to Jagai Madai again and again, despite Jagai Madai was so, violent. So shows an example how a preacher should be. On the other side, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says, don't go and preach to those who are jealous of me or who do not believe in me. But we also see Nityanand Prabhu's example. But at the same time, we know today's preaching. Like we don't say preachers to go to that extent. No, the way Nityanand Prabhuji is showing an example. So how would that balance be understood?
Well, in the same chapter 1870, Krishna is also saying that one who preaches the holy name is very dear to me,
It's very dear.
one who
Yes.
preaches this message. So it's a risky business. Srila Prabhupada explains it's a very risky business to preach. But one who takes that risk then benefits also. But one thing we must note here very carefully is that when we see that someone is not taking the process, we should not compromise. We should not water down the message. We should not change the message to please people. If one beats us up and throws us out, that's okay. We go away. We go somewhere else. We tried, but we did not just, we did not keep on pestering people. So we should not just unnecessarily hang around for the sake of our own false ego. There's a distinction. Doing it for the Lord or doing for our own ego. Look, I have such a big congregation. Look, there are 14 people listening to me. This is false ego.
Yes.
Whether 4 people, 14 people, or 140 people, doesn't make any difference. Message is the same. So it may be risky. People will do mischief against us also. But we have to tolerate all of that.
Thank you, Prabhuji. That was helpful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat
Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Jai.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Thank you so
Prabhuji.
much.
Dandavat pranam.